NASCAR put it out there. NASCAR along with ABB, who I wasn't familiar with ABB. Crasher, you know of ABB from back in the day with IndyCar, right?
Well, when you say ABB, I think of Teo Fabi. I believe he was the first driver to have an ABB sponsorship, and then they were it's an associate sponsor with several other teams. But yeah, they had a department in Indianapolis. They've got offices all over the country.
Sure.
I even did a 6-month temporary venture answering their phones for a little while before I moved out to Los Angeles. Very big in obviously electronics and anything automotive, aeronautical, you name it.
So NASCAR's teamed up with ABB and they put it out there. I don't know if you saw it in person, Richie, but this EV Cup car, this EV NASCAR, it wasn't a Cup, this EV NASCAR stock car.
Which, if we're being honest, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was trying to convince fans, hey, this is going to be fun. He even said, that's kind of like a toy that we play with, guys. This is going to be fun.
NASCAR's not shoving it down your throat. Guy on the couch hasn't shaved or showered in 4 or 5 weeks. They're not telling you that they're going to run this car at Pocono this year.
Next weekend,
right. Or next year, or the next year. What they're saying is, Skipjack, who has never owned a business, the only thing you own is a razor that's 14 years old and you continue to use. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Especially you just said they haven't shaved in 4 weeks. So do they own a razor?
14 years.
Yeah, okay.
Just sit back and watch what NASCAR does with this electrification of their vehicles. It's coming. It's here. I would own an EV tomorrow if the infrastructure was there. I'd get rid of all of my gas snorkelers in a heartbeat if the infrastructure was there, without a doubt. Or I'd live in California because, damn it, they got to figure it out. When we were there for 7 days, we couldn't get kicked out of parking spots. It's reserved for an EV. Get out of here, you bastard.
You gas snuggler, as you call it. You don't belong here anymore.
Looking at me in that Dodge. What are you driving? Is it unleaded in there, boy? No, like your kind here. Outside the Hearst Castle.
The sea lions out in the front yard.
So just listen, haters, just sit back and let's watch this as you go outside and mow your freaking lawn with a Honda-powered engine, and then your wife hops in a Toyota, the same guy that was bitching 20 years ago. What? Toyota coming in? What? Settle down.
They're ruining my NASCAR.
So what does IndyCar do? They introduce a new power plant midway through the season. Crash?
Not really a new power plant. Well, okay, yeah, a little bit of power plant. They introduced their hybrid cars. Now, this has been delayed. This process has been delayed, I think, at least twice, if not 3 times. And there was a lot of negative press about IndyCar delaying the hybrid again in this past offseason. So IndyCar had to do something. Do they wait until the 2026 season, yet another year of the delay, or do they just figure out how to make it happen in the middle of 2025 when all of this pressure, especially as we're hearing from Honda, one of IndyCar's engine manufacturers, was coming? And Honda's saying, hey, if we don't start getting what we want out of this series, we're outie. So, and not Audi, the car manufacturer, we're out. So, yeah, IndyCar had to do something. You can make arguments for both sides. Should have delayed it until 2026 because it would have been more fair for the competitors. The drivers were arguing that. Look what happened to Scott Dixon in Sunday's race. He couldn't even take the green flag because his battery was, nothing was charging. So, yes, there's arguments on both sides. It's here, though. So
yes, it is.
You will hear a little bit from drivers on both the happiness of the hybrid and the, hey, we didn't get enough chance to test it, I'm not happy side of the argument as well.
One of those drivers experiencing the hybrid today, of course, is IndyCar pilot Christian Lundgaard, talking about running the hybrid.
From the one test day that we did about 5 months ago, I think it's similar. It was at Indy Road because we know that we have a fast car anyway, so we were quick there too. I do think that other teams that have had more testing and had more time and found some different solutions that we simply just haven't had the opportunity to even consider. So from that standpoint of view, I think we did a good job this weekend. In hindsight, I think it's limited what you can really do. I think it all comes down to people being able, because there's so much to do. We just simply don't have people or time to analyze it and understand it. So I think everybody is relatively landed in a similar spot. Even though that I think the ultimate potential is much better if it's understood right. But from a first get-go, I think we executed. I do think that you shouldn't implement something in the middle of the season, and I think you don't see that in any other racing series. I understand why they've done it, but yet again, I think it's just created so many complications for everybody in the middle of the season. That's
not the least of which Scott Dixon running for a championship, and now massive hit.
Do you think they were so far behind the 8-ball with their current manufacturers and a manufacturer that they were hoping to bring in, that again, Honda was ready to pull the freaking plug unless they made a move, and they had to do it because conventional wisdom says you don't make a change like this middle of the season. You don't change the kickoff return in the middle of game 8 in the National Football League.
I think that any race series that's dependent upon manufacturer support that hasn't considered or done electrification or hybridization, at least bringing that into their conversation, is threatened with losing that and manufacturer support. That's the bottom line. And the manufacturers have said that openly, and I can't imagine what they've said behind closed doors to force IndyCar on the drivers like this, and having an impact on the championship season of drivers.
And to take what Christian Lundgaard said as well, another in a little bit of a different direction, in which he said, we haven't had the time that other teams have. That's another mistake, in my opinion, that IndyCar as a series made, not allowing every team the same amount of test time in order to accumulate the data needed to be successful on track. Because like Christian just alluded to, they were chasing things this debut weekend at Mid-Ohio. That's not necessarily fair when other teams, let's just say Team Penske, for one, had plenty of data stored up, at least enough to make their debut look a little more successful.
Yeah, Penske and Ganassi have both had enormous amounts of time to test. At first, they were the only ones that got the system at the beginning of the year.
Which is also strange.
Before St. Pete. And they were out there testing, running it through the mill. And the other people just were thrown in at the last minute and said, hey, you can try this out this weekend.
Briefly, Nolan Siegel running for Arrow McLaren, the second race, talking about running the hybrid.
Never tested gear, never tested the hybrid. So a lot to learn, but ultimately I think we were actually all right. I think that we tried in a really aggressive 3-stop and it didn't quite work out for us. So we were in a position to try something kind of radical that could either work really well or really badly, and unfortunately it didn't go our way. So I think the execution was actually quite good, and I think the pace was good. Our strategy didn't quite work out for us.
Nolan Siegel, again, running for Arrow McLaren. Kind of meh about the hybrid system. We'll see how it goes for, was it Iowa next week, Crasher?
Doubleheader in Iowa.
Oh, my goodness.
Oval with the hybrid. Double ovals with the hybrid now.
Holy smokes. Animation? No, anime. We'll get to that story and more coming up. SpeedFreaks Pits and the Lucas Oil Studios.